Greetings, 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 everyone. And yes, of course, as I say every time this happens, it is my favorite time of the month because it is Being Brown at Work Live. And you can see I have yet another fabulous guest that I'm going to introduce you all to right at this moment right now because as a lot of you have been messaging and commenting, this topic is hot. So we're going to not defer too long and get into it, but I want you to meet this fabulous young man. His name is Jerry Jerome, and he specializes in communications. From storytelling to art direction to organizing to public relations, Jerry Jerome uses his talents to make the world a better place. Jerome led a campaign at his alma mater that led to the university divesting from prison profiteering and unsustainable food practices. He began speaking on TikTok and amassed a following of over 40,000 people who sent him messages daily explaining how he opened their mind and made their day a bit better. His creative work has accumulated millions of engagements and been shared across the entire world. Jerome has been featured in African Stream, Palm Beach Post, Jet Black Travel, Shaka Bars, and Nasia. Is it Nasia?
Yeah,
Nasia Nation. Currently, he is searching for his next role inside of an organization or agency working on strategic communications. He hopes to be acknowledged as a master of his creative craft and a staunch voice to protect the vulnerable. Jerry, welcome to Being Brown at Work Live. Welcome.
I appreciate you having me on here.
Oh, it is an honor. It is an absolute honor. When I was virtually introduced to you, and then we had our discovery call, I was like, yes, this is a conversation, and this is a young man I have to have be honored to have as a guest. And so, as you and I chatted just before we went live, Jerry, you were going to talk about professionalism. And really, I would love to get your perspective of why we're even talking about it. I mean, as Black and Brown people, there's a different definition out there for us, unfortunately. So I would love to get your perspective on why this is a topic for us. Why do you believe, and what maybe has been your experience around it?
Man, um, that's a great question. And I think you started off on a great note with the black and brown people.
Mhm.
Even if we look historically, the origins of professionalism is deeply tied with with racism in America. That professionalism as a concept comes out before World War One, and it or sorry after World War One in the beginning of the in the beginning of 1900s, the beginning of the 20th century, and you see people, you see communities all across America having a growing need for proper health care, for proper mental health care, for proper dental care, for proper social services. And that's the point where, even outside this conversation, just as a historical fact, that's the point where we really see doctors and social services and mental health workers really become an idea. Because, of course, after World War One and even preparing for World War Two, in the midst of the economic conflict and the geographic political conflict climate at the time, there was a growing need for people to have their needs addressed, their physical needs,
Yeah.
their health needs addressed. So at this point, if you're trying to practice medicine, you need a way to establish credibility. You need a way to tell people that you know what you're doing. You need a way
Yes.
to get people to come into your practice and trust who you are. So it begins as a way of giving credibility really in medicine. And
Mm.
ironic that we say that, because if you think about what the rhetoric is now about the most professional people, what do we say? Doctors and lawyer, be a doctor or a lawyer, doctors and
Sure
lawyers.
do. You're right.
Exactly.
Yep.
Because professionalism, the roots of professionalism started off with medicine. So in reality, people in the healthcare field were able to make the first definitions and form the first encasing
Mm.
professionalism. Now, that's just a historical context void of the context of racism. Now, if we put white supremacy in there, if we put racial tensions in there, then we understand how these things, of course, adversely affected Black people. If I could add one more fact, that professionalism also throughout its evolution as a concept became a way to separate yourself from being an employee. And as we see in during the beginning of the 1900s, this is the Industrial Revolution. At this point, this is when technology is starting to uprise. You start to see things like washing machines become a conversation. Start to see things like air conditioning become a conversation.
Right. Right.
Credit is probably 20, 30 years from being at its peak after World War II. So you see this idea where if I'm a working class person, and I'm trying to take care of my family, but I don't want to be an employee. I don't want to be talked to like an employee. I don't want to be controlled like an employee, and I don't want to be
Right.
paid like an employee. Then I can use my profession and say I'm a professional instead of an employee, and now I get to have my own practice. Now I get to have
Ah.
my own business. Now I get to tell people what to do. So if we think about that as a concept, it parallels white supremacy because the bulk of professionalism was to get you to get away from something, get away from being an
Mm.
employee so you can have more power. What does that sound like? White supremacy, get you away from
Mm.
blackness so you can have more power. So all of these things, I think that was a great way to start this conversation. All these things are deeply intertwined with race and racial relations in America.
Yes, it clearly. And something you said so resonated with me because I know that has been my challenge early in my career when you tied it to validity of your expertise, right? Which you said in opening. And I know, especially I know when I when I started wearing my hair naturally, right? And I interviewed for the first time for a vice president role. Jerry, I had to interview 8 times. 8. I had to bring in evidence of what was on my resume. They even questioned that I had an engineering degree from Carnegie Mellon. Now they had to call the school to that. So the school told them yes, but they still were challenged to believe it. And then I had to bring in evidence of my Six Sigma programs where I had saved millions of dollars. So, to your point of the validity around me being given who what I look like, and at the time I had just started natural look, so it was short. It looked, natural. It was there. They're looking at me like, wait a minute, vice president, and then the offer that came to me was not vice president, it was general manager. So they took it down a notch, right? And I politely said, no, thank you. I'm not that person because it's clearly a vice president role. So what you said so resonates, and it unfortunately is still prevalent today. And it is rooted in this racist and racism mentality. It clearly is because looking at someone, people like ourselves, it's not automatic. They don't connect the dots to, oh my gosh, these are professionals. Oh my gosh, they are, you're excellent in communications, or I'm excellent in my field of my degree in engineering or in quality. Definitely is the situation that is at hand today, unfortunately, because you gave entering into the 20th century. We're in 2025, and it's alive and well. The definition of professionalism, as you described it.
No, man, you said that perfectly. You said that perfectly, and it's truly tiring being a black person and having to prove time and time again that you are credible, having to prove time and time again that you belong in the room. And I'm glad that you mentioned even when it comes down to the to your hair, the natural hair that grows out of your head. You're not adding an adjustment, an attachment, and a different. This is your
I hear.
genetics, and somehow
Exactly.
there's still politics behind that. So yeah, definitely. Like professionalism is so deeply intertwined with racism, and as Black people, this is just a necessary conversation that we need to have to even
Have to
survive in
have.
this world.
Yes, we have to, I mean, this is what I do. This is, I'm so about calling a thing. And I think it's so important that we identify it, right? I mean, now I have micro locks. I still wear my hair natural. And I mean, I'm in a vice president role, but it was not easy attained, right? And this was years ago that I recalled that story, not easily attained. And I know for a fact today, I've had people that I mentor over the years that are lighter toned but brown skin, maybe have a different uh, kind of accent, because they come from a parts of the world with an accent, and they've been told get rid of that accent. Well,
Hmm.
that's innately who they are. They're Brazilian. They're what? That's who they are, right? How you can
Yeah.
get rid? Just like, I mean, this is who I am. So, to your point, right? But it is unfortunately negatively associated to the value that we bring to the table, to our worth, to our ability to succeed. And it's just, I mean, it's ludicrous, but it's real,
Yeah.
and we deal with it on a daily basis. So, I love that you gave us a little bit of history lesson. To see, I love facts and data, and people then can't, although they will say that it's emotionally based, but the facts
Yeah.
and data that you gave are so real because even today, in a lot of Black and Brown ethnic backgrounds, I know East Indians are are big on this, you know, if you're going to be professional, be a doctor or a lawyer. So when
Hmm.
you said that, I mean, that's so real. I know
Yeah.
I heard that growing up, right? I
Hmm.
mean,
Yeah.
engineer kind of flew in there a little bit,
Yeah.
but
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
right, at least a little bit. So,
Yeah.
you know, Jerry, if we pull it into today's world, right? I mean, you know, yeah, we got the foundation, and you so beautifully, you know, laid that foundation out for us for the beginnings of this. But as I just said, it's 2025. What
Yeah.
would be your assertion of why we're still talking about this?
Yeah. And I also appreciate that question. You know, what's interesting is that there are more CEOs in America named Michael than there are female CEOs. There are more CEOs in America named Michael than there are female CEOs, period. And
Period.
even when you talk about your perception, the world's perception of your natural hair, the intersectionality, and I know that's a buzzword that we use a lot, but honestly, I feel like it is very relevant in this
Oh,
conversation.
very. Yes.
Intersectionality, even between you being a woman and
Yes.
also being black, also brings a lot of points into the conversation that my natural hair, it's something where if I walk in an interview, I'm not really thinking that much about. I'm thinking, do I have a cut or not? I'm thinking, how do my tape look? Is it straight or not?
Exactly.
Or fade?
Right.
But I'm not thinking about truly the the hair on my head, and I think that's something that's again a very distinctive distinction that I wanted to make. But when you talk about how professionalism comes into a present day era, what I often think about is our understanding of productivity and our understanding
Mm,
being productive. I think if we look at the definition of how productivity has been put out into the world, that we understand that there is a specific group that has been in control of what looks productive. And it's funny because the people who enslaved an entire race of people for their productivity somehow has the voice to say what's productive. And I think
mm.
that's the biggest hypocrisy that we often in corporate America have to tend to, that we are often the highest earners. We are often the most credible. We are often viewed as the most valuable, the highest. We got the president and the manager and the specialist, and we have all of these nomenclature to give us this
Yes.
ability. But when it comes down to our work, oftentimes you'll talk to people who work in corporate America, and I sit at a desk, or I get paid and I don't really do much, or I just get paid to kind of do meetings, or I just get paid because of my name and my experience. That the people who are holding this world together are not us. It's the
Mm,
janitors, it's the bus drivers,
mm.
it's the construction workers, it's the people
Yes.
build and pave the floors that we stand on. It's the people
Yes.
who watch the weather and dictate when the rain that falls on us and the hurricanes. And it's the people who have a commitment to serving people. And often I believe
Yes.
corporate America, regardless of race, sometimes we can be consumed by the false meritocracy, where we believe that if we got this degree and we somehow resume our way into this position, then we deserve a certain amount of income. And
Wow.
if we can't question that, then we do not have the position to question white supremacy in the workplace, because
Oh
they
my,
go hand in hand.
oh my God. Okay, look, you just said, yes, 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 yes. And it's irrespective of the race, because I'm telling you, I think you're going to agree with what I just said. People that look like us tend to be all about that,
For
right?
sure, for sure.
Tend to be all about that. Because
Hmm.
I got mine,
Yep.
and I got this piece of paper, and I have these letters after my name. So, hey, for the
Yeah.
rest of y'all, whatever, you know,
Exactly.
get in where you can try to fit in, because I'm clearly not going to help you. I'm not going to reach across her back. I could care less. And you're right, irrespective of the white supremacy or the racism piece. It's that corporate mentality, which unfortunately that corporate ladder climb kind of brings that out in
Yeah.
people, right?
Yeah.
It kind of brings that we versus us versus them, and we versus that they, that kind of thing, and the I of it all
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And it's oh my God, that's so, that the way you said it was so well put. And I
Hmm.
think the definition of productivity is misconstrued,
Hmm.
completely
Yeah.
misconstrued. Because you're absolutely right. The people I often say, I've been worked hard, don't get me wrong, but I've got a ton of people that are on my team that really make the difference. And they may not have the titles, right? Their box may not be high on that org chart,
Hmm.
but they're the ones that make the difference.
Yeah.
They're the ones. So I will never say what Linda did. It is all about what these groups of individuals of people around the world that
Yeah.
just happen to connect with me and believe in my vision, they go and get it done,
Yeah.
right? And to
Agreed.
your point, the janitors, the people, all the I speak when I'm in the office. There's a young woman that walks past my office every day, pushing a big cart. She's, bless her heart, smiles. Hey, Linda, how are you doing? But cleaning the bathrooms, emptying the trash. That's what makes the difference for me. And I make sure I take time to talk to her
Yeah.
every time I'm in the office,
Yeah.
right? And she happens to be a white woman. Doesn't matter to me, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. But I
Yeah.
know that when she's working hard and making the difference for me to be in the office, sitting in a clean office,
Exactly. Exactly.
right?
Exactly. And I think that's the biggest difference morally or value wise that we see from the slave owners and the white power structure in the beginnings of America, and even
Yes.
black people now, where you, even in your position, your corporate position, are still willing to even treat a white woman as a human, really speak to her and engage with her, and make sure that she feels welcome in her space. Where if we look at the values that this country was created upon, black women were raising some of these slave owners children.
Children.
Black men were tilling their property, their grass, picking their cotton, we creating their economy, building their houses,
Yes.
and we weren't even able to be acknowledged as human beings. But if we look today, even throughout all of the resilience, all of what we've been through throughout the entire African diaspora, we still have enough kindness to look at somebody, even a white woman who's in the office, who's working in a position quote unquote under us, and still say, I'm not gonna do what your ancestors did to me. And I think
No,
it's beautiful.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm not. And I'll tell you, and Jerry, some people that look like me walk past me and won't even,
Yeah.
let alone look my direction. They clearly ain't gonna say hello.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
that's a shame. And that's gonna be another session, y'all, because we gonna address that. I need y'all. Me and probably work. We gonna address our issues as well because we
Yeah.
gotta correct that. So,
Yeah.
Jerry, I mean, this has been, I mean, absolutely what you have shared as far as the foundation of this definition of professionalism and how it links to the the poorly defined definition of productivity, and how it's connected to what we look like and the value that we bring, quote unquote, based on who we are, right, as people. And it's, for us as Black and Brown people, it never equates, right? It just never equates. And
Mhm.
for whatever reason, even today in 2025, we're still struggling to be looked at as professionals,
Yeah.
as people who bring, and we're the most educated, are we not?
Mhm.
We're usually the most educated in the room,
Yeah. Yeah.
the most experienced in the room.
Yeah.
But yet, we don't have that automatic connection when other people look at us.
Exactly. And a big part of my page, which is what I'll always advocate for, is I always say that black people anywhere, whether you're in America, whether you're in Australia, whether you're in Europe, whether you're in Asia, whether you're in South America, black people are only strong as Africa, because there is no difference, visual difference, physical difference from us and an African on the continent, whether they came
No.
Zimbabwean, Ethiopian, Burkina Faso, from Burkina Faso. We You could take an African on the continental African on the continent right now, bring them to America. They got the same hair. They could get the same
Yep.
box as you. They could get the
All the
same
same.
taper fade as me. They got the same hair. They got the same lips, the same
Yeah.
facial structure. So oftentimes we ignore the narrative that Africa has. And when we look at Africa throughout history, what is the narrative of African people? They don't have water. They're so poor. There's some starving African children that don't have it. The African people are dirty. African people live in mud huts. If As long as that narrative exists, even within our people, as long as that narrative exists in general, what makes you so different to the power structure? Because you
Mm.
might have a Chase debit account,
Mm.
because you have a Tesla sitting in your garage. No,
Wow.
you have the same hair text. People, they won't even tell you apart. If you put the same clothes on, you won't even be able to tell them apart.
No.
So I think that's something that is extremely important in the conversation of professionalism, Pan Africanism, because again, that idea of productivity comes from removing the agency from African people,
Yes.
and it's all hypocritical, critical because one, Burkina Faso this year has just launched an electric vehicle completely manufactured domestically. An electric vehicle. That means they are in competition with the Elon Musk. They're in
Wow.
competition with the Hyundais. They're in competition with the Toyotas. That they step into the electric vehicle manufacturing. They step forward in electrical vehicle
Yep.
manufacturing, and their vehicles. You could look at it. You wouldn't, because of what they tell you about Africa, because what they try to
Yeah.
convince you about Africa. You wouldn't believe it's from Africa. You would say, "Oh,
Right.
this is from Japan. Oh, this is from North America."
Right.
They're from African people. And you know why it's more valuable that it's from African people? Because they didn't need to ship the materials to make that car across the Atlantic Ocean. They have it
They had
right
they
under
had it
their
right
feet.
there.
They have it
Yes.
right under their feet. Where if you look at America, they need to take boatloads,
Yes.
they need to make train tracks, they need to fly cargoes, they need to fly airplanes to extract the minerals and the materials to make those electric cars that Africa already has. So how can we look at productivity in America and say Americans are the most productive when the only reason you're productive is because you're taking what these people produced? How can we
Hmm.
say Americans are the most productive
Right.
when you're taking the knowledge and the people and the labor of the people that we come from? And again,
Right.
we are so closely tied with Africa. As long as anyone believes that Africans are just living in mud huts and don't have food and water,
Oh,
then
clearly not.
then
Yeah.
you can't go to work and
No.
believe that you're going to be viewed as the top boss.
Exactly. You cannot. You cannot change that perspective of yourself when you walk in if you believe that. And I tell you, and that's work that we have to do as a people because we do believe that,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately,
Yeah,
right? And it's the reverse because I've talked to some Africans that don't view us. I mean, and I understand why they have an issue with us as
yeah,
Americans. I completely
yeah,
get it. I get it, right? And we have to have that conversation. But no, you're absolutely, absolutely correct. And so if we don't do that ourselves, how do we expect others that don't look like us to do
yeah,
it, to have that different view if we don't even have it ourselves and we have that separatism and think of us as higher versus lower? You're absolutely correct. I mean, completely spot on, 100% correct. And so
mhm,
as we just wrap to end this call, Jerry, because what you all want to do is make sure you join us for part two because Jerry's going to share with us. We're talking about the foundation and the why of it all and how we got to where we are today. And then in a couple of weeks, part two is going to be all about okay, we're here and it is what it is. How do we,
mhm,
as Black and Brown people, rise above that and still show up as our authentic self? How do we, in those dealing with those systemic challenges and all the things that Jerry just shared, how do we still, with our resilience, because that's one piece we're going to have forever, it seems,
mhm.
is resilience. How do we still show up authentically and be viewed as we should be as professional individuals? So Jerry, as we wrap this call for this evening, is there any other points or context you want to make sure we leave with our audience so that because what's going to be so important, I know what's going to happen. They're going to take this information, digest it. We're going to get bombarded with comments and
Yeah,
different things as this gets, it's live now, and as people go back and hit it on the replay. Anything else you want to share with them so they can fully walk away with a complete understanding of the why, so that in a couple of weeks when they come back and say, okay, now I'm ready for the what and the how,
yeah,
to counter this. Anything else you want to share?
yeah. And I appreciate you opening that space up for me. More than anything, I just want to provide words of encouragement. Um,
Mm,
I want to remind everybody that your imagination is the most valuable thing that you have in your asset. What you can imagine, what you can think of, what thoughts come into your mind, what ideas come into your mind, is has an it is you cannot put a price to how valuable that is in all of us. And
yeah.
one thing I want to remind ourselves is to always question whose reality, whose imagination we are living in. If you believe that the only way you can be respected is in a suit and a tie, who imagined that for you? If you believe
Ooh,
the only way that you can be valued is if you have a certain hair texture, who imagined that for you? Whose mind are you living in? And always bring it to your own mind. Always bring it to the mind of the people who came before you. Always bring it to the people who paved the way so you could be here. Because a lot of times we're living in imaginations we're living in imagination of the people who paved the way so we couldn't be here. So we couldn't find a way.
yes.
Live in the imagination of the people who truly always wanted the best for you and the people who come after you. And quickly, once you see that, you'll realize I'm not ashamed of my natural hair. You'll realize I'm not ashamed to wear these African garments, and I'm not ashamed to wear colorful suits. I'm not ashamed to eat this type of food. I'm not ashamed
Yes.
to bathe this way. I'm not ashamed to talk this way. But it all starts with whose imagination you're living in. So that's what I
Oh
would
my
say.
gosh.
Encourage people to go into the next meeting. Remember to imagine your own world and don't live in it.
Imagine your own world. Oh my God, that was everything.
I
That was everything.
appreciate it.
Who are you walking in imagination of when you come in that suit? Who imagined that for you? Oh my God. I
Yeah.
mean, that was everything for me. I'm gonna
Uh,
be thinking now, okay, wait a minute. Who was I imagining? Who was I living through before? Because it clearly wasn't mine. I'm gonna tell you, it wasn't when I was putting them chemicals in my hair and that hot iron.
yeah.
It was not
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
imagination. This is though, because it's been freeing. I can't
Yeah.
even. I've lost count of the number of years. Man, it's been freeing.
Yeah.
Jerry,
It
that was
looked great.
everything. Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate you. I appreciate you. That was everything. That last, I think that, I mean, I know for a fact that it landed in here with me and it's
Uh,
going to resonate with the audience as they, ponder this topic of professionalism over the next couple of weeks. And they join us in a couple of weeks to find out some actionable items and actionable steps they can take and methodologies. This was everything, Jerry. I knew it was going to
uh,
be. When I met you
thank you.
a couple months ago, I knew it was going to be everything. Look, if you guys want to connect with Jerry, you can find him on IG. You can find, you're on LinkedIn too, right?
Yeah,
You
I'm
can
on.
find him on LinkedIn, IG, TikTok. You on
Yeah,
TikTok?
TikTok.
Of
Yes.
course, I should have
Yeah.
known. Yes, you can find him, connect with him. You can see this man has so much wisdom,
uh,
so many nuggets to share. Extremely inspirational, educational, which is extremely important. We have to be educated. We have to speak with data and facts, right? As we move forward. And Jerry, I so appreciate you for being a guest today, and I can't wait for part two in a
me
couple of
too.
weeks. I
Me too.
cannot. All
Yes.
right.
It's nice to
All
meet
right,
you.
everyone. Until next time, take care now.